The Germs, formed in Los Angeles in 1977 by vocalist Darby Crash and guitarist Pat Smear, are often regarded as one of the first true American hardcore punk bands. Their sound was chaotic, fast, and abrasive, embodying the reckless spirit of early punk. Inspired heavily by British acts such as the Sex Pistols and the Damned, the Germs created music that was deliberately rough and unpolished, rejecting mainstream norms. Their live shows became infamous for their volatility, with Darby Crash's unpredictable and destructive stage presence turning every performance into an experiment in controlled chaos. Although their recorded output was limited, primarily the cult classic album G.I. produced by Joan Jett, the Germs, influence reached far beyond their short-lived career, laying the groundwork for Los Angeles hardcore and inspiring countless future bands. T.S.O.L, on the other hand, came slightly later, forming in 1978 in Long Beach, California. While rooted in the same punk ethos as the Germs, T.S.O.L took a different direction musically. Their early work reflected hardcore aggression, but the band quickly incorporated gothic, deathrock, and even political elements into their sound. Albums such as Dance With Me demonstrated a darker, more atmospheric tone compared to the raw brutality of the Germs. This expansion of style showcased their willingness to experiment, drawing from post-punk and horror-inspired aesthetics. T.S.O.L lyrics often tackled social issues, personal struggles, and existential themes, marking them as more reflective compared to the nihilistic anarchy of the Germs. While the Germs are remembered primarily for their groundbreaking but short burst of influence before Darby Crash's tragic death in 1980, T.S.O.L continued to evolve through lineup changes and shifting styles. They bridged the gap between hardcore punk and gothic rock, proving punk could stretch into darker, more experimental directions without losing its core defiance. In conclusion, the Germs embodied the raw, destructive roots of American punk, a chaotic spark that ignited a movement. T.S.O.L carried that energy forward, but reshaped it with depth and versatility, carving out a unique space in punk history. Together, they illustrate the contrasting yet complementary sides of the Southern California punk legacy, one rooted in destruction, the other in reinvention. Live performance battle. T.S.O.L quickly became known for mixing political punk themes with gothic overtones. On stage, their performance was sharp, commanding, and often theatrical. Frontman Jack Grisham had a reputation for being witty, sarcastic, and completely in control of the crowd. His voice, deep and dramatic, combined with the band's dark riffs, created an almost sinister presence. Watching T.S.O.L live was like watching punk evolve beyond its raw origins, structured, stylish, yet still aggressive. On the other hand, the Germs, led by the infamous Darby Crash, embodied the opposite spirit. Their live shows were legendary for being chaotic, unpredictable, and at times completely unhinged. Darby would slur, stumble, and often throw himself into the crowd, creating an atmosphere of pure anarchy. The band was less about precision and more about channeling punk's destructive energy. Pat Smear's guitar was a wall of distortion, and the rhythm section kept the chaos barely stitched together. The Germs' performances were dangerous, messy, but unforgettable because of the sheer intensity. In a live battle, T.S.O.L would likely win over the crowd with musicianship and presence. Their ability to deliver tight performances while still maintaining punk aggression gave them a professionalism rare in the early hardcore scene. However, the Germs would counter with raw energy that no other band could replicate. Darby's stage antics and the feeling that anything could happen at a Germs show made them a band that lived and died by chaos. Lyrics and social message. T.S.O.L lyrics often blended political anger with gothic undertones and a sense of dramatic storytelling. Early songs from their hardcore punk era carried sharp critiques of war, government, and social control. For example, tracks like Abolish Government or Silent Majority expressed direct frustration at political systems and apathetic citizens. Unlike many bands that stayed purely in the fast and loud aggression of punk, T.S.O.L added layers of dark imagery, social alienation, and even horror themes in their later works. This mixture created a unique space where social criticism was not just political, but also psychological, showing how individuals felt trapped or corrupted by society. Their lyrics sent the message that rebellion was not only about resisting authority, but also about questioning morality, culture, and the structures of everyday life. On the other hand, the Germs approached lyrics with rawer, more nihilistic energy. Their songs, like Lexicon Devil and Manimal, were filled with cryptic, surreal lines that mirrored Crash's philosophy of destruction and self-destruction. The Germs did not always deliver a straightforward political message. Instead, their words embodied a social message through their very sense of chaos. By rejecting clarity and embracing disorder, their lyrics symbolized a generation's frustration with conformity, suburban culture, and a world that seemed to have no future. Their performances and lyrics communicated that punk was not just music, but a lifestyle of defiance, even if it meant embracing chaos and self-destruction as a form of truth. Comparing both, T.S.O.L projected a more articulate form of social criticism, engaging directly with themes of politics and morality, while the Germs embodied the collapse of meaning itself, showing how society's failures drove youth toward chaos. T.S.O.L asked listeners to reflect, while the Germs dared them to burn everything down. Both carried important messages in the punk movement: that society was broken, that conformity was poison, and that rebellion, whether through sharp critique or chaotic destruction, was a necessary response. Fans in pop culture. When it comes to the American punk scene, both T.S.O.L and the Germs hold legendary status, but their fan bases and cultural impact have very different flavors. The Germs, active in the late 1970s Los Angeles punk explosion, became notorious for chaos, danger, and a raw sound that perfectly mirrored the self-destructive energy of frontman Darby Crash. Their fans embraced this intensity, often drawn to the unpredictable atmosphere of their live shows. To many, the Germs represented the very essence of reckless, uncompromising punk. This reputation cemented their cult status, inspiring later generations despite their relatively short career. T.S.O.L, on the other hand, carved a different identity when they emerged in the early 1980s. While rooted in hardcore punk, they infused gothic, deathrock, and even political themes into their music. Their fans were drawn not only to the aggression of punk, but also to the dark theatricality and versatility that the band brought. Over the years, T.S.O.L managed to evolve without losing their connection to the underground scene, allowing their audience to grow alongside them. Their willingness to experiment made them stand out in a scene often resistant to change. In terms of pop culture, the Germs have become mythologized. The iconic blue circle drawn on fans' wrists symbolized allegiance to the band, a badge of raw authenticity. The 2007 biopic What We Do Is Secret further immortalized their story, even for audiences outside the hardcore punk circle. The Germs, image fueled by Crash's tragic death at only 22, continues to influence fashion, film, and even mainstream representations of punk rebellion.